After the events of Tekken 7, it seemed as though Heihachi had finally met his demise, as even though he had been presumed dead in the series before, it truly seemed as though his story had come to an end, and his legacy would be continued by the mysterious new character, Reina. But I guess we should have taken what he said to Raven in Tekken 5 seriously, because now he's back as the third DLC character alongside Eddy Gordo and Lidia Sobieska, who all feature in a new short storyline, Unforgotten Echoes, which takes place alongside the events of Tekken 8's The Dark Awakens storyline, and explains how Heihachi Mishima has been resurrected, as well as answering some burning questions that we were left with at the end of Tekken 8, such as whether or not Jun is actually alive, and the potential true origins of Reina. So let's jump in to Unforgotten Echoes and see the resurrection of the King of Iron Fist. Unforgotten Echoes opens up with the return of Eddy Gordo, a Brazilian capoeira fighter who first joined the series back in Tekken 3, when he had just been released from prison as he had been falsely charged with the murder of his father, who ran one of the largest companies in Brazil. Eddy joined the King of Iron Fist tournament in order to try and get the Mishima Zaibatsu's assistance in tracking down the gang leader that Eddy suspected was responsible for his father's death. However, after he was able to interrogate the crime boss, Eddy discovers that Kazuya had been involved with the crime, leaving Eddy with no direct recourse for revenge, as Kazuya was presumed dead after the end of Tekken 2. He then turned his attention to trying to aid the elderly capoeira master who had taught him his techniques in prison, as he had promised that he would pass down his teachings to the master's granddaughter, Christy Monterio. After he tracked her down and shared what he had learned, she quickly became an impressive fighter, and she would go on to enter the 4th King of Iron Fist tournament in search of Eddy, as he had disappeared, presumably trying to track down Kazuya after hearing news of his revival. After the tournament, Christy's grandfather was finally released from prison. However, he was in very poor condition and was rushed to hospital and diagnosed with a terminal illness. So both Eddy and Christy entered the 5th King of Iron Fist tournament in order to try and help fund his healthcare. However, after neither of them managed to win, Eddy was desperate for help, so he would approach Jun Kazama, as he was now the head of the Mishima Zaibatsu after winning the tournament. Jin agreed to help Eddy's master as long as Eddy becomes a member of the Tekken Force. Eddy reluctantly agreed, and went on to fight alongside Nina Williams on behalf of the Zaibatsu, as it waged war on the rest of the world and G Corporation during the events of Tekken 6. However, despite the advanced healthcare that he received, Eddy's master passed away, and Eddy was overcome with grief and guilt for his actions, so he abandoned the Tekken Force. During the events of Tekken 7, things got a little weird for Eddy, as he went out to seek revenge against Kazuya, who now had control of the G Corporation, but instead ended up fighting against one of Tekken's most controversial characters, Lucky Chloe, a pop idol who serves as the face of the G Corporation brand. After defeating her, he asks for the location of Kazuya, only for her to troll him with a crayon drawing, which sends him into a fit of rage before she flees. Yeah, they really didn't know what to do with Eddy in this one. Anyway, back to Unforgotten Echoes, which starts with Eddy having a flashback to an encounter with Kazuya when Eddy stormed G Corporation's Millennium Tower, seeking to exact revenge. Eddy was quickly overpowered by Kazuya. However, Eddy managed to survive the fight, as he was rescued by Yoshimitsu, who reunited him with an old friend of Eddy's, Lidia Sobieska, a karate master who is also the Prime Minister of Poland. The country of Poland had been heavily affected by the conflict between G Corporation and the Mishima Zaibatsu, as the Tekken Force had illegally stationed soldiers in the country. However, after Heihachi disappeared in Tekken 7, she began to connect with different groups such as Yoshimitsu's Manji clan to gather intel on their mutual enemies. Now Eddy is leading a group of former Tekken Force soldiers who wish to atone for their time serving in the Zaibatsu, alongside Yoshimitsu and Lidia. Eddy awakes aboard an airship with Yoshimitsu, which is en route to the Yggdrasil airbase. as they want to discuss with Lars allying against Kazuya in their upcoming strike, as Unforgotten Echoes starts 2 months before the main story of Tekken 8. Eddy approaches Lars with his force of Tekken soldiers who are ready to atone for their sins and aid in the fight against G Corporation, so Lars proposes a match to see how truly ready they are. After Eddy and Lars spar, Lars suggests that they meet a key member of the team, Jun Kazama, who hadn't seen Eddy since he shared the news of his master's death. Jun says that Eddy must despise him after everything he made him do for the Tekken Force. Eddy says little and prepares to fight. However, after Eddy manages to win, he says that he doesn't blame Jin, as his actions were all down to the choices that he himself made. Jin remarks about how Eddy has changed and apologizes for his past actions. Eddy then reassures Jin that anyone can rise again and redeem themselves, and mentions to Jin that he could change too, and proposes that together they fight for the future as friends. After leaving the Yggdrasil base, Eddy is contacted by Lidia and told to head to a Mishima base in South America to negotiate and recruit Tekken Force soldiers to their cause, as after the apparent death of Heihachi, the Mishima Zaibatsu has been in disarray. However, they receive intel that the base is being attacked by G Corporation, so Eddy rushes there in order to aid them before they're overrun by G Corporation. Meanwhile, at the Zaibatsu base, we see a group of Tekken Force soldiers that have been overpowered by G Corporation troops. And just as they're about to be executed, Eddy arrives in the nick of time and jumps in to take on the G Corporation troops. After Eddy dispatches the G Corp soldiers, a figure from his past appears, as Nina Williams fires a warning shot at Eddy, who is surprised to see that she's switched sides from the Mishima Zaibatsu and is now working with Kazuya and G Corp. As the two fight, Nina remarks that Eddy has changed from the man she knew, who followed orders against his will. As the fight continues, Nina suddenly decides that it's time to leave, merely stating that she's gathered all the data she needs. After Nina leaves, Eddy is approached by a group of Tekken Force soldiers. Eddy asks them to follow him on his journey of redemption and fight against Kazuya and put a stop to the war. As the troops agree to follow Eddy, Nina flies overhead and mentions that she's left a present for Eddy, as a group of Jack 7s appear armed with explosives, ready to self-destruct. Eddy bolts forward directly at the Jack robots and dropkicks them back, saving the Tekken Force troops. However, it appears that Eddy may have been caught in the blast, but he eventually appears unscathed and rallies the troops, promising to protect those who follow him. Shortly after, Eddy reports back to Lidia to inform her that after he successfully recruited the Tekken Force, Eddy managed to look through their database, where he found some interesting information on a group known only as the Tekken Monks, who have been attacking remnant groups of the Mishima Zaibatsu. In the next chapter, time jumps forward to just after Jin and Kazuya fight in Times Square, at the start of Tekken 8's main story. We see Lidia, Eddy, and Yoshimitsu traveling in an airship en route to meet with an informant. During the flight, Lidia is listening to a news broadcast, commending her for leading UN forces to help free New York from G Corporation control. However, she still feels guilt due to the fact that she couldn't stop Kazuya. Eddy senses her guilt and reminds Lidia that there is always hope and that they should keep pushing forward. As before Lidia saved Eddy, he was ready to give up, but Lydia's words had saved him. When they arrive, Lidia finally meets the informant who had given her the leaked information from G Corporation, who we know as Reina. Lidia thanks her as it helped greatly in the fight to save New York. However, Lidia wants to know who she is and what she wants. However, Reina just refers back to a letter that Lidia had received directly from Heihachi. Lidia is shocked, as she hadn't told anyone about the letter's existence, so she's able to deduce that Reina must be connected to Heihachi in some way. While we don't get to see the exact contents of the letter in this cutscene, there's actually a full transcript of the letter online, as when Lidia was added as DLC to Tekken 7, promotional care packages including a karate belt and this letter were sent out to journalists and fans. In the game's canon, the letter was sent during the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7, and in the letter Heihachi denies Lidia's request to remove the Tekken force from Poland, and attempts to intimidate Lidia by claiming that if she doesn't cooperate with the Mishima Zaibatsu, then she could find herself and her country in a perilous situation, and that if she has any objections, she could always enter the King of Iron Fist Tournament and propose them directly to Heihachi. Before the two can discuss any further, Reina senses that they have company, and they quickly begin to fight. After Lidia comes out victorious, Reina looks up to the sky before some mysterious staffs fall to the ground, surrounding Lidia, as a mysterious voice calls out to her and commends Lidia on her skills, stating that she may be the peerless warrior that the Tekken monks have been seeking, but they must first ensure that she is worthy. The staffs begin to emit a smoke that causes Lidia to hallucinate, as she sees visions of Tekken monks surrounding her, who Lidia prepares to take on. After fighting numerous monks, Lidia emerges victorious, and her visions begin to subside, and the voice states that she has great potential and urges her to seek out the monks. Reina then tells Lidia that the Tekken monks are so secretive that even the Mishima Zaibatsu has no real records on them, but they do know that they see the Mishimas as a threat and have disrupted every attempt to search for Heihachi after his fight with Kazuya. Lidia then asks Reina if she had planned this all along, and intended for her to seek out the Tekken monks to find out more, and Reina confirms and tells Lidia to think of it as the fee for the intel that she provided. Lidia then goes out to track down the Tekken monks. Upon entering their base, Lidia is challenged by the Tekken High Priest Seiryu, who wants to test Lidia's fighting abilities and her mastery of her body and fighting technique, and Lidia quickly manages to prove her prowess. Next, the Tekken High Priest Suzaku wants to test her mettle as black smoke fills the room, and a vision of Devil Kazuya appears to test Lidia's mind. And Lidia manages to remain cool and collected and effectively defeats the vision of Kazuya, spurred on by the responsibility she feels to her country and comrades who have faith in her. Her performance in the trials impresses the High Priest Suzaku, who praises Lidia and believes that she is the warrior that they have been looking for, as she has a perfect balance of their three disciplines: mind, body, and technique, and reveals that there is someone that she should meet, someone who seems immediately familiar. We then get some backstory on the Tekken monks and how centuries ago the Mishima style was used to exterminate demons, and two clans had fought to become the true successor to the style. However, the Tekken monks suffered a defeat and went into hiding, devoting themselves to a peaceful path, following Buddhist teachings, and vowed to one day master the ultimate technique of the Mishima style to restore the fighting style to its former glory. We then see the mysterious monk from earlier displaying their mastery of the Mishima fighting style. Who is now revealed to be none other than Heihachi Mishima, who managed to survive his fight in the volcano with Kazuya 6 months prior, as Seiryu had been poised in the volcano and leapt up, catching Heihachi before he fell into the lava. However, after that brush with death, Heihachi is left with no memories of his past self and acts completely differently as a peaceful, pure, and more mindful fighter whose only concern is following the Tekken monk's teachings in order to complete the imminent Star Crusher trial, which will require him to use the Mishima style's ultimate technique, which will need a perfect balance of mind, body, and technique. Heihachi expresses concern to Sairyu that he may not be able to master the technique and complete the trial successfully, and the two begin to spar in order to see if Heihachi is truly ready. After winning the first round, Heihachi hears the voice of his former self, ordering him to finish Sairyu. Heihachi steps back in shock, confused by what just happened, while Sairyu rises up and praises Heihachi, claiming he could lead the Tekken monks. After Heihachi wins the fight, Lidia and Yoshimitsu approach, and Heihachi greets them warmly. Lidia comments that the training appears to be going well, but Sairyu states while Heihachi's body and technique are perfect, his mind is wavering. Lidia wonders if this could be due to the memory loss. Sairyu confirms this and states that everything they've done so far, rescuing Heihachi and training him for the Star Crusher trial, is all for the sake of the Tekken monks fulfilling their sacred vow of restoring the Mishima fighting style to its former glory and purity. We then jump to one day before the trial, where Sairyu informs Lidia and Eddy of the Tekken monk's vow, and that only Mishima-style fighters that are pure of heart can undertake the Star Crusher trial. So the Tekken monks have decided to perform a vision ritual that could help Heihachi to overcome his past by unlocking his memories of his former self and facing the darkness within. As Heihachi fights his former self, his opponent proves to be a powerful and merciless fighter. However, he refuses to give up and endures, finally managing to overcome his past self, stating that he's been given a second chance and that he won't let it go to waste as he banishes away his dark history with a powerful blow. He then awakens from his vision, and the Tekken monks inform him that he has attained a mind worthy of a true warrior, and all that's left for him to do is master the ultimate technique and purify the Mishima style once again. Now, as the day of the trial has arrived, Lidia has agreed to help Heihachi train and prepare for the trial, and the two begin to fight and go back and forth round after round, proving to be an incredibly even match as both fighters show a true balance of mind, body and technique as they fight throughout the day. That evening, Heihachi is informed that for the Star Crusher trial, he must destroy a meteor that falls every 200 years, and Heihachi shows no hesitation, resolute that he will complete the trial. Lidia then asks Heihachi if he'll join them in the fight against Kazuya after the trial. Suzaku interjects and states that if Heihachi masters the ultimate technique, they'll finally be able to fight against the Devil Gene. Just hearing of the Devil Gene sparks memories in Heihachi of Kazuya and Kazumi, but Heihachi tries to ignore it, and then agrees that he will aid in the fight against Kazuya and put him back in his place, and marches onwards to the Star Crusher trial. Heihachi approaches a cliff edge and begins to meditate while awaiting the arrival of the meteor. Meanwhile, we cut to Jin and Kazuya's fight during the main story as they are fighting in space. At the moment when they clash so fiercely that they cleanse each other of the Devil Gene, there's a massive explosion, causing the rock they're fighting on to split into meteors, with one heading directly towards Heihachi, who calmly stands up and braces for impact. As the meteor continues to approach, Heihachi calmly and decisively strikes the meteor, making contact and stopping the meteor. However, its momentum is too great and begins to push forward. However, Heihachi won't let it overpower him and headbutts the meteor, just as he had done in his previous fight with Kazuya. The meteor stops in its path and explodes, engulfing the area in smoke. In the wake of its destruction, Heihachi is seen emerging. However, there's been a change in his demeanor. With a sinister smirk, we can see that the old Heihachi has been reawoken, now with his chest showing a scarred imprint of Kazuya's fist, a reminder of the fearsome bout that almost killed him. Now, empowered with the ultimate technique, he goes on a rampage throughout the monastery, defeating every Tekken monk that would stand in his way. Lidia, Eddy, and Yoshimitsu rush to the aid of the monks. However, Heihachi would make short work of them. Lidia, however, manages to stand firm, drawing motivation from her past and her desire to protect those who are counting on her. However, despite Lidia's best efforts, Heihachi is simply too powerful and unleashes the Mishima-style ultimate technique on her, causing her to crumple to the ground, unable to fight on. Now, more powerful than ever, Heihachi tosses his opposition aside and swears that he will put his son Kazuya back in his place, and states, once their blood awakens, everything will fall into place. Thus concluding the story of Unforgotten Echoes. While we know that Heihachi is alive and more powerful than ever, we're still left with some questions for the future, as we don't know exactly whose blood Heihachi is referring to. The obvious guess is Reina, as at the end of Tekken 8's story, we saw that she possesses the devil gene and has managed to awaken it. But as he says their blood rather than her blood, we can't be certain that he's referring to just Reina. However, with the information we have right now, she still seems like the most likely option. And now, thanks to the classified archives added in the DLC, it appears we finally have an answer to Reina's true origins. As one entry explains, sometime after Heihachi killed his wife Kazumi Hachijo, Heihachi went and tracked down the other members of the Hachijo clan in order to wipe out anyone who possessed the devil gene. However, he decided to spare one baby girl, who logically must have been Reina, who Heihachi potentially trained in secret, and also may have been part of the gene splicing experiments mentioned in Tekken 4, where he intended to splice Ogre's DNA with the devil gene to create a new life form. While we don't have an exact time window for when any of these events happened, my best guess is sometime between Tekken 2 and 3, after Jin was born, as Reina appears to be a bit younger than Jin. The archives also give a nice breakdown of the events of the whole Tekken story, and also give additional context and details to characters and events. Also, let's quickly go over a quick retcon of the story that's been added now. So now, in Tekken 4, it was actually Kazuya who won the tournament and not Heihachi. And after Heihachi was defeated, he took Kazuya to Honmaru, and from there the events play out as normal. Also, thanks Harada and team for changing this and announcing the story DLC just after I released my complete story of Tekken video. That was perfect timing, cheers. We also now have a more detailed backstory on the Kliesen family and their research into the devil gene. Leo grew up raised by their mother, Emma, who worked as a geneticist, and Leo's father was an archaeologist who disappeared while on an expedition when Leo was young. Emma Kliesen worked at the Mishima Zaibatsu, where she oversaw Heihachi's genetic experiments, which attempted to create humans with the power of the devil gene, using Nina Williams' eggs and a synthetic devil gene. Many of the experiments failed. However, one of the children in the program, known as Subject NT01, or Steve, formed a bond with Emma, and she decided to help him escape the lab at the age of 6 by faking his death and transferring Steve to an orphanage in the United Kingdom, where he was adopted and would eventually go into boxing under the name of Steve Fox. Eventually, Emma moved away from the Zaibatsu, presumably to distance herself after helping Steve escape, and started working with the opposition, G Corporation, where she began to research the body of Kazuya. Now, in Unforgotten Echoes, you can unlock Emma's journal entries detailing her excitement at getting to study the mysteries of the devil gene, but also her moral conflict by how the devil gene's power could be abused. So she moved to a different facility in Nepal and began working on a secret project to discover ways to potentially weaken the devil gene. However, her research was disrupted and stolen in an attack launched by the Mishima Zaibatsu, where they infiltrated multiple G Corporation facilities. However, at the Nebraska facility, Kazuya single-handedly dispatched the assailants. And it was then that G Corporation decided that Kazuya was too dangerous and would have to be taken care of. However, after their assassination attempt failed, Emma knew that Kazuya would seek out revenge on the higher-ups of G Corp, as well as anyone who was involved with the project. Wanting to make sure her research would end up in the right hands, she arranged for an email to be sent to Leo after her death, telling Leo that in order to seek out the truth, they would need to infiltrate G Corporation to recover her research. After breaking inside, Leo is caught by G Corporation, but then quickly rescued by their estranged father, Nicolas. Leo is in disbelief as he's been absent for so long, and Nicolas apologizes and promises to tell Leo everything later, but for now, they need to leave, as he's already obtained Emma's research on the devil gene. This then leads into the events of Tekken 8, where Leo and Nicolas aid Yggdrasil in their fight against Kazuya by sharing their research and understanding of the devil gene. Also in the archives, we finally have more elaboration on Jun's backstory, her relationship with Kazuya and the Kazama bloodline, as well as a final answer to her fate after her fight with Ogre. Jun Kazama grew up on the island of Yakushima, where it became clear early on that she possessed a hidden power, as she could sense things that others could not. The Kazama clan had lived on the remote island for many generations, and their bloodline descends from the same ancestral roots as Zafina, whose ancestors had initially sealed Azazel away. The Kazama clan possesses spiritual abilities and used to serve as exorcists in the imperial court. However, as time went on, the clan lost touch with their roots and traditions, and many of the clan left the island, such as Asuka Kazama's family, who moved to Osaka. So Jun's powers led to her being treated like an outcast, and she only felt comfortable around animals as they were pure of heart and free of negative faults. Eventually, she left Yakushima after feeling isolated and confined on the island, and ended up moving to a large city, where she began to lose touch with her affinity for nature and the supernatural elements of the world. However, one night, Jun dreamt of her father, who came to bid her goodbye. The next morning, she received news of his passing, and the event stirred something inside of her and reminded her of her life in Yakushima and her connection to nature. So she decided to become a wildlife surveillance officer. While working, Jun discovered stories that the Mishima Zaibatsu was involved in the illegal smuggling of animals, and that the head of the company, Kazuya Mishima, would be holding the King of Iron Fist tournament, and Jun entered in an attempt to bring him to justice. However, when she met Kazuya, she felt a strange aura emanating from him, and she immediately felt that he would understand how she felt, living life as an outcast, encumbered by their supernatural powers. So she felt that perhaps she could help to save him from a life of solitude. So the two became close, and in their short time together, conceived a child before Kazuya was defeated by Heihachi at the end of the tournament. After Kazuya's disappearance, Jun was confronted by an evil presence, and Jun could tell it was the same entity that had been possessing Kazuya, Devil. Jun sensed that Devil wanted the soul of her unborn child, so she fought back to protect it. However, Devil was incredibly powerful, and as Jun fought, she prayed for some kind of miracle to aid her. Quickly, Jun began to feel a strange sensation as a bright light began to flow from her body and imbued her with a great power that she used to defeat Devil. After the fight, the light faded, and Jun contemplated what happened, and assumed it must have been her Kazama blood protecting Jin from being corrupted by the devil gene, inherited from Kazuya. After the fight, Jun retreated to Yakushima to give birth to Jin, and lived a quiet life raising Jin to a teenager, trying to instill many of the Kazama traditions. However, this would be disrupted when Ogre would attack the island, and Jun would fight for her life against him. She drew Ogre to the secret Kazama Sanctum, located in the depths of the Yakushima Mountains, in order to draw upon its power to defeat Ogre. After finishing the fight, she was exhausted and lay down on the altar of the Sanctum and fell into a deep sleep. In Tekken 8, we see she used the power of the Sanctum to communicate subconsciously with Jin during his fight with Kazuya, and is able to grant him the power of purification by creating a small white bird of light. After helping Jin, we see the bird return to the Sanctum and begins to glow on her chest as she wakes up, revealing that Jun is alive. She then wishes for both Kazuya and Jin to be safe and unharmed. So now we can 100% confirm that Jun was alive standing over Kazuya at the end of Tekken 8. So while we finally have some more answers and information from this DLC, we're still left with quite a few questions about where the story will go next. Like, how will Jun and Kazuya react when they see each other again? Can Kazuya truly be forgiven or redeemed for his past actions? Jin now doesn't have the devil gene, and how will he stand up to Heihachi? And what's Heihachi's plan with Reina? I guess we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, if you want a refresher on the mainline story of Tekken, I've done a video called The Complete History of Tekken, which I'll leave a link for in the description, which covers everything from Tekken 1 up to the end of Tekken 8. Thank you so much for watching, and drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.